From training to performing, join our big league conversation. Welcome to the CSP Elite Baseball Development Podcast with your host, Eric Cressey.
Welcome back to the CSP Elite Baseball Development Podcast. I'm Eric Cressey, and we're excited for another great podcast. This is our 11th episode. Before we get to it, though, I want to let you know that this episode is brought to you by Pedestal Footwear. There are shoes for everything from bowling to skiing, but when it comes to training indoors, there's not really great options out there besides traditional sneakers, and that's where Pedestal Footwear comes in. They protect us from the elements, but at the same time, give us some really great benefits on top of that. So they've been featured in Men's Health, Women's Health, the Huffington Post, MSNBC, and they've been trusted by a lot of the top strength coaches in the world. I personally wear Pedestal Footwear quite a bit when I deadlift and want to be really in contact with the ground and not worry about slipping. They're on a mission to get athletes out of traditional sneakers and into pedestals to help mitigate injury and improve performance. They're durable enough to handle all of your training needs, and their silver lining, to eliminate odor and bacteria. There's a patented grip design for extra traction. You can throw them in your pocket and, really nice. They're made here in the USA. Pedestal does some great stuff in terms of customization, wholesale options. On a personal level, Brandon McKee, the founder, is a former CSP athlete who's now retired and crushing it in the entrepreneurial world. And we love to support good people who are out to, solve problems and change the world. So they were nice enough to set up a coupon code. If you use EC20, you'll get 20% off at checkout. That's pedestalfootwear.com. Again, it's EC20 for 20% off at checkout at pedestalfootwear.com. That's PEDESTAL footwear.com. With that said, let's get to today's guest. Today's guest is a left-handed relief pitcher for the Baltimore Orioles. He was drafted in the 6th round by the Rangers in 2008. In high school, he was the state of Florida All-Star in 2005. And in his junior year of college at Florida Gulf Coast University, he was unanimously selected as the Atlantic Sun Conference Pitcher of the Year. He made his major league debut with the Yankees in 2016 after parts of 9 seasons in minor league baseball. Between 2016 and 2018, he didn't have an ERA over 2. And he just finished his first offseason as a CSP athlete after going through lat surgery last season. Welcome, Richard Bleier. All right, everyone, we're here with Richard Bleier from the Baltimore Orioles. Richard, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Eric. Appreciate it.
This is going to be a lot of fun. So as I mentioned in the intro, you're a new CSP guy. This is your first off season with us. And, I think what the coolest thing about you is that, you get to know you as like a physical athlete and obviously what you do as a pitcher and all that stuff too. But I think taking it a step further, you get to interact with a lot of guys, and you spent so much time in the minor leagues. You spent so much time with multiple organizations that, you've gotten to know a lot of different players, and everybody seems to have like a Richard Bleier story, which makes it super entertaining. So I think that's going to make this an even better kind of interview as we work our way through. So just fill me a little bit. So obviously you were drafted in the 6th round by the Rangers back in 2008. And it was a long go of it in the minor leagues. So give me a little kind of backstory on that history. And then I've got a couple quotes I want to read to you and get your take on.
All right. Yeah. So 08 drafted, short season. I went to short season 2008, did okay. Started the year in 2009 in low A, and about 5-6 weeks into the season, I got moved up to high A Bakersfield, and, things were looking up. I was, pitching well. And then I finished the year in 09 in high A, and then 2010, I started in double A in the rotation. It was like me and like 4 first round. Tanner Rourke was there, Tanner Sheppers, Blake Bevan, and Alexi Ogando were the starters. So it was like this huge prospect list of starters, and then myself. So, and then 4 years later, I was still in Frisco, and then I had a car accident in 2011. That wasn't my fault, for the record, and I broke my wrist. And 12, I had a little bit of an elbow thing that I missed half the year and went back to Double A. And then 13, I started the year in Triple A. I'll never forget. We had a meeting the first day we were there, and I was on the Phantom DL to start the year. They kind of just needed a place to put me. And the manager calls everybody over and he's like, I know all you guys are really upset to be here. Wish you were in the big leagues. And I'm sitting over there as happy as ever. I just spent 4 years in Double A. I'm, pretty happy to get out of Double A. And then I ended up getting sent down, 6 weeks into the season there, back to Double A. And then, so after the 13th season, I ended up getting minor league Rule 5 to the Blue Jays. And then I thought, I didn't even really know, all I knew was about the Major League Rule 5, where you have to spend the whole year in the big leagues or they send you back. So I just assumed the minor league Rule 5 was the same way. You had to spend the whole year in AAA or you got sent back. So all of camp, in Toronto, I was walking around thinking I was going to AAA. And that's not the case at all. They pretty much just have you and they could put you anywhere. So back to Double A I went in 14. And then 15, I signed as a minor league free agent with the Nationals. Started the year in Double A, was up and down. I ended up probably spending about half the year in Double A, half the year in Triple A. And in 15, I had a really good year in 15. And then 16, I signed as a minor league free agent with my first big league camp invite with the Yankees, and ended up getting to the big leagues in May. And then spent the majority of the year in the big leagues there. And then DFA'd in spring training of 17 when the Yankees signed Chris Carter, and traded to the Orioles, and now I've been with the Orioles for the last few years here.
So what's interesting is, and these are the quotes I'm going to throw to you. So obviously you went up in 2016, spent a little time in the show, and then got sent back down. And there were some pretty substantial changes that you made to kind of your arsenal. And I'm going to read the first quotes from Sam Miller at ESPN. He said, Bleier has the best career ERA plus in Major League history with a minimum of 95 innings. And then a few days later, John Meoli in the Baltimore Sun said, by one measurement, Richard Bleier is the best statistical pitcher to ever toe the Major League rubber. He knows that by the relatively arbitrary measure of pitchers with 101 big league innings or more, his 242 ERA plus was the best. His raw ERA of 1.78 is the best in baseball history for that qualifier as well. So for a guy who spent literally a decade almost in the minor leagues, parts of 9 seasons, what changed from being a career minor leaguer who was playing with house money just by getting to the big leagues to being a guy who's put up a sub-2 ERA for the last 3 seasons with really unreal numbers?
So when I got to the big leagues, obviously my my sinker cutter combo has been extremely effective the last couple of years in the big leagues, but I got to the big leagues without it. And in 2015, when I had I threw 170 something innings, I had a 2.5 ERA between the two levels. So, and I was just mostly fastball changeup. And I think I was so stubborn in my earlier years as a starter and it was so pounded into my head that, okay, base hit. All right, well, runner on first, double play ball still, and then, all right, what's my best ground ball pitch? My fastball down and away. So I throw a first pitch fastball. Oh, there's another hit, or whatever. And I would just keep going for that. I just kept pumping fastballs in situations where I was trying to get double play balls and I never really switched it up. It was always, so it was crazy. I'd have complete game shutouts on 85 pitches where I would have 20 something ground outs. And then the next game I'd make the same exact pitches and I'd give up 9 runs where it would be the same results, ground balls, just in the holes. And it'd be 11 hits on 9 runs in 3 innings or something like that. So I think in 15, I just actually started mixing up my pitches. I don't know what took me, and, I just would throw changeups and fastball counts, and I would get a lot weaker contact. And even then, even in 15, I would throw 100 pitches, and I would throw probably the majority fastballs and probably 10 to 15 changeups a game and 3 sliders. And it's so then, and still, I still use my fastball a lot in the big leagues, but it definitely, that kind of was a precursor into and then once I developed the cutter, it made things a lot easier. We talked about when I was there, the cutter I could throw my fastball down the middle and get a lot of outs that way, honestly.
Absolutely. So, with the cutter, let's talk about that. I know we've kind of gotten some cool interviews at the facility about it, and I'll post those in the show notes for people who haven't actually seen them. But, let's talk what goes into a good cutter, because there's so many guys that throw them accidentally because
Right.
they don't have a high spin efficiency four seam, or there are guys that just do it because they get into bad mechanical faults. Like yours is obviously very deliberate, and you do it on
Right.
purpose, and you trust it a lot. So, what goes into a good cutter for you?
So I get asked that question a lot by teammates, like how do you throw your cutter? And I think the best thing, because for me, I've never been able to spin the ball well and spin a slider, and that's why I don't really use it that often. It's just not that good. And so I was always struggling to find a third pitch, something that went the other way. All my fastballs and my changeups run away from righties, and I needed something to come in. So, and I really realized that it got exposed in my bat out. If I struggled in the big leagues in 16 when I was first up, and so when I was warming up for a game in 16, when I got sent down in AAA, I went back into the rotation there, and I was warming up, and I just knew that I needed to be able to establish inside and pitch inside and get outs inside, not just throw in there. And so I just offset a fastball very slightly to negate the run, because even my four seam has run, and I don't really want the ball. I want the ball to stay true or stay in, not really come back on the middle of the plate. It's not really effective, coming back into the barrel. And it cut, and then I threw like 15 of them that game, and then from there I kind of built off that, and I think like the aspect of the mindset, I should say the mindset of not trying to create break with a cutter, but just trying to throw a fastball that may or may not cut, but it helped me develop it into the pitch it is today, because I never really threw it the intention of cutting. I just wanted to throw a straight ball. So and a lot of guys want to just throw a cutter and then they'll throw it, and it's like a harder bad slider, and that's not really effective. Once you have a dot on the pitch, from the spin, like a slider spin pitch, it's more recognizable than a true cutter, which is just a fastball that cuts. And for me, it came a little bit easier once I kind of did that.
Now with the cutter too, like you obviously see guys who throw an elite breaking ball, and once they've learned one breaking ball, they learn how to shape it a little bit differently. So we watched a lot of like Corey Kluber over the years, where the breaking ball will be
Right.
83 to 85, and then the cutter could be 87 all the way up to 91 when he's really got the arm speed for a day. Do you see guys that can shape a cutter differently and make it a little bit more like slider-ish? If so, is that something that you've played around with personally, or is it the same thing pretty much every day, every at bat?
So you know, I think that if I were to ever try and add and subtract movement from the pitch, I think it would lose its effectiveness, because then I'm worrying about the movement. For me, still, when I throw it, I'm just offsetting the grip and throwing a fastball into a righty.
Mm-hmm.
And if it stays straight, that I'm still okay with it, as long as if it's a located pitch. And then if it cuts, even better. But I think the only time you get the depth, if you really get on top of the ball, get on top of the pitch, and it goes down, obviously, like, I mean, I try and throw my cutter belt high or higher every single time.
Mm-hmm.
And if I get kind of my fingers on top a little bit more or whatever, and angle it down a little bit, it'll have that depth, and it'll be more of a slider, a hard slider, but that's just purely accidental, honestly.
Do you think that a big part of you being able to pick the cutter up when the time was right was that you had spent all those years, basically optimizing fastball command? Like, you're not a guy who walks a ton of guys. And if so, is that something that young pitchers, fastball command is a prerequisite to actually developing an elite cutter, or do you think they can be treated independently?
I think for me, man, I was so stubborn coming up. I just my double A pitching. I was just saying, I had the same double A pitching coach for all those years when I was in Frisco and double A with the Rangers, and he's like, you have to pitch in. If you ever want to pitch in the big leagues, you have to pitch in. I can't. I always would say, I can't do it. I just don't do it. I throw fastballs away and changeups away. And I just don't pitch into righties. And so I think the fastball command, once I started committing to actually throwing fastballs in, and it's like, well, if I can throw an arm side fastball, it's a lot easier if you can command an arm side fastball for me to move the ball in, as opposed to, because I feel like it's, your body wants to rotate anyways, so like to stay on line and to be able to stick a down and away fastball like to a righty for me, or down into a lefty is like one of the hardest pitches to throw overall. Once you master it, they always say be able to throw down and away 9 out of 10 times. And I think that, like, when I'm warming up, if I'm throwing my fastballs down and away, everything else works off of that.
That's a good point.
Including my cutter, where I know that my delivery is as good as it's going to be if I'm making that pitch, continuously, and then I kind of go off that with all the other pitches at cutter too. So I think they're different, but because I don't know. Honestly, it's a lot easier for me to throw a cutter. I know exactly where my hand needs to be to get the ball in the zone and to get it up and stuff like that. And it's actually it's my go-to pitch for a strike over my fastball, honestly. So it's definitely come a long way.
Absolutely. Now, like it goes without saying, you're, in an age of, guys throwing triple digits and, putting up just elite velocity numbers. Like, you're not an elite velocity guy by major league standards. Your fastball probably tops out around 91. Do you find yourself, because of that, looking at scouting reports and the analytics available to you more to find hitters' weaknesses, or is it much more along the lines of I pitch to my strengths regardless of who's in the box?
It's definitely give and take. I do a lot of work with the scouting reports, and I watch a lot of video on all the hitters, and I just like to see, how they're doing, what they're hitting, what they're not hitting overall. I like to find some guys that throw similar to me and how they got them out. Any information that is offered, you'd be a fool to not take advantage of it. So I'm welcome to all the information available, and I take what I feel like I can use, and I disregard what I don't think applies to me. But at the end of the day, you can have this whole plan for everyone and all that, and all of a sudden, these are major league hitters. So even if you make a pitch, they're still going to get a hit. But for me, I want to get guys out with my strengths, and I feel like, I feel like to be a good major league pitcher, you have to be if a guy's a good down and away hitter, you have to respect that. But still, if that's your pitch, you just have to go with the fact that you're better than him, in my opinion, to a point. JD Martinez hits about 600 on fastballs middle away. I don't, I'm not trying to give out my secrets here, but I'm probably not going to throw him a middle away fastball, and I don't think anybody really is on purpose, because he hits a home run pretty much every single time. So, that kind of stuff you have to be aware of and know the situation as well. But you definitely want to pitch to your strengths.
Yeah. So I'm gonna shift gears just a little bit, and I'll distinctly remember a conversation we had this off season, and you told me that you considered yourself the most unlikely big leaguer of all time. So elaborate for me on what you meant with that.
Well, I don't know. I don't like you said, as far as the game is now with the strikeouts and velocity and stuff, I'm just like the complete opposite of that. I don't strike guys out, and I don't throw hard. So when I'm like trying to find comps of me in the big league, comparable pitchers that have pitched against guys, like, this is slim pickings, that's for sure. So it's really, and I remember in the minor leagues, I would always think, like, man, who do I most compare to in the big leagues that pitches the same kind of way I do, throws as hard as I do? And then it would be like, oh, no one really. And I'm like, that's probably not a good thing. So, but there's I use like Dallas Keuchel a lot for, because he throws a cutter and a two seam and stuff. And so when I look at his videos and like CC kind of is he uses his breaking ball more, Sabathia,
the
but
newer CC.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the more, not the 95 plus CC, the 90 CC. So but I mean, it's funny because I signed a minor league deal with the Nationals, and then, I'm like, man, I'm just never going to get to the big leagues. And minor league free agency isn't terrible. You could make decent money once you get to minor league free agency, even if you have no big league time. And I was fully prepared to just play out my days in the minor leagues and make decent money and work in the off season and just, put off the real life, the real world.
So here's a good kind of building on that, right? So 5 organizations over the course of 11 seasons. So that's a ton of pitching coaches and managers with all different schools of thought. So, we have a lot of like young coaches, college coaches, even pro coaches, strength coaches, you name it, who are listening to this and want to help the athletes they train. What are some of the common traits of some of the coaches that have helped you the most? What have you liked over the years? What have you disliked along that path?
I think pitching, and actually our pitching coach here, Doug Brocail, has done a really good job about this. Is like it to simplify it as much as possible. Direction and load are the two. I think if you have your directions online with home plate and you have a good load, the rest of the stuff's going to work itself out. And at the end of the day, pitching is an athletic movement, so if you get so caught up, if you're on the mound competing in a game and you're worried about, oh, well, I need to do this with my hands, and you're worried about 40,000 different delivery things, then you lose track of making pitches. Where for me, and it's funny because like when I throw bullpens in spring training, they're terrible because I'm thinking about every single delivery point I have. And then when I'm in the game competing, I'm thinking about, okay, I need to make this pitch down and away. And I visualize all like the few pitches, like the pitches that I remember, like that's the pitch and that's the delivery, and it just comes together, and that's when I'm at my best, when I'm just thinking about executing pitches and not thinking about make sure you get your arm here and do all this with your hands, all the mechanical stuff. So I think alignment and then and compete and be an athlete.
What about things you haven't liked? What looking back on the time you spent in those 11 years, what were some of the things that actually set you on bad paths? Like, is it coaches that are unyieldingly negative when you don't throw well? Is it guys that have you standing on your feet for 9 hours a day during spring training? What are the things that looking back in time were things that were, hindrances to your development?
Yeah, I don't know. I think like when I first got into pro ball, like my first week there, like there was some guy, like some higher ups came in and tried to change like my whole delivery. And I just thought that it's like, I just got drafted for a reason. Like, let me at least pitch the way I pitch. Well, you guys drafted me because of how I pitch. Don't try and change everything. So that was kind of like, like, hey, welcome, change everything. Like, okay, yeah. Thanks. But I've done a good job of taking the information in and trying it. If it doesn't work, kind of pushing it right back out, honestly. So, I don't, all the extra stuff we do in spring training and all that stuff is fine. I don't really mind it at all. It's weird to me going to the field, throwing, running and leaving. So I like being there. It's fun being around all the guys, and as long as it's a good group of people, it's worth being there. In terms of that, but I don't, I can't really think of any like specific things that, they tried to move me on the rubber years back, and I understand the concept. I'm on the first base side now, which I feel like creates a lot of deception, especially for lefties, and especially since my arm slot's a little lower, I'm kind of throwing behind them. And they tried to move me to the third base side just to release the ball in the strike zone, as opposed to throwing the ball from out of the strike zone back in the strike zone.
Was that before the cutter came along and it was a way to help you get to the glove side?
This was like 2000. This is way back in, when I was repeating. I would say this was probably 11 or 12 or so when I was struggling. I mean, rightfully so. I was getting rocked as a starter in Double-A there for a couple of years. So there was something that needed to be changed. I just knew that wasn't it. I think, and I wasn't thrilled about that. But to the pitching coach's defense, it was like, I wasn't getting any outs. I needed to try something different.
Yeah, but, hindsight is always 20/20. We can look at it years later and say that. All right, so here's the fun part. Parts of 9 seasons in minor league baseball. Tell me a couple good stories. When you think about your minor league experience of sleeping in closets and long bus rides, what rings a bell as being the most pronounced?
There's a lot. You could imagine I have quite a bit of stories. Yeah. I had to think about the PG-13 stories. So I have a few funny ones. So I'd say in 2011 or 12ish maybe, when I was in Double-A, but Steve Buechele was my manager for 09, 10, 11, 12, and 13. So I had him for a long time. He's now the Rangers bench coach. And so it was like one of the years where it was like our third year together or something. I don't remember exactly what year. And my parents were in town, and my parents are definitely outgoing. So this was in Texas, so it wasn't that cold, but in my mom's eyes, it was cold. So the game starts 7:05. It's about 7 o'clock. She walks down to the dugout, and I was on one end. The whole team had to be on the line for the anthem. So everybody was in the dugout right before the anthem. Reaches in the dugout, taps my manager on the shoulder, and says, "Hi, I'm Richard's mom. Can you give him this jacket? It's a little cold out there." And so he turns around, says, "Richard, your mom brought this jacket for you. Please put it on." And that was pretty embarrassing, you can imagine. And
That's
then
amazing.
I think this is another parent story. My dad, by far my biggest fan. He's funny. He'll still text me, and he texts me before my spring training games. Don't give Judge anything good to hit, but he.
Because that was the plan, to give him something really good to hit, right?
Yeah, exactly. I was planning on giving him something really good to hit, but now that you said no, I'm not going to. So one of those, I think it might have been the same road trip. Honestly, he's going to probably be mad at me for this, but a foul ball was hit to wherever he was. He never sits down when I'm pitching. He walks around. He just paces the entire stadium. He's a nervous wreck. It's hilarious. So a foul ball goes to wherever he was, and I'm on the team. I can get him, as many baseballs as he wants, but for whatever reason, he wants to run after this foul ball. And I don't know. I heard that he might have cut in front of a kid to get the ball. I don't really know. I didn't see it. I can't confirm. All I know is that the whole stadium was booing him until he gave up the ball to the kid. And this is after he probably told every single person in the stands that he's my dad. So yeah, that was a good time.
It goes both ways, because we've sat in friends and family like a lot over the years, and one of the lessons that I've learned is when I bring like a family member with me, or even just a friend or something, that's like, hey, when you're in the friends and family, like, kind of like act like you've been there before. It's you don't want to be like, oh, whose son are you, or whose parent are you, or start talking about all that stuff, and you never want to like talk smack about a player, because you never know. His
right.
grandma's. So your dad's like the opposite of it. He reminds everybody that he's there with you.
Yeah. Well, that's why I'm happy he goes out and paces and stuff, because, if someone doesn't make a play behind me, I can only imagine. And it's like, you're sitting next to their entire family. But he's been extremely supportive. He actually wanted to come in and interview you before I went there. Just
I
to
love
make
it.
sure you were right for me.
Make sure I'm not a serial killer or anything like that. It worked out okay. So here's a good segue. One of the things that has blown me away, and this is something I'm actually talking to Steve Cishek, and we're doing a podcast with him later today. But one of the things that blew me away is Steve is like the nicest guy on the planet. And when he was closing in Miami, like literally some of the stuff people would, he at one point saved like 33 consecutive games without blowing a save. And then, a ground ball gets through and you blow a save, and all of a sudden everybody on Twitter is, got social media muscles. What's the funniest thing a fan has ever yelled at you or said to you on social media?
Oh, boy. Funniest thing. I don't have a Twitter, because
for that reason,
it's just no good. No, it's just, for the little it does, that's good. It just seems like it creates more problems for people that play baseball. So I haven't really seen anything on Twitter, but I'd say, so in 2016, or no, in 17, I told you I got DFA'd and traded to the Orioles. Well, the first day of spring training, I posted some picture on Instagram about glad to be back, and some picture of me throwing a ball and with the Yankees. And then like that afternoon or the next day, I got DFA'd, and there was like just comment after comment of like, "And you got released, you suck, see ya," like just blasting me. And I was like, okay, yeah,
God bless the internet, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So we'll get back on track with this. All right. So last year, middle of June 2013, and this is what ultimately led you to CSP, is you tore your lat off the bone. So people don't realize this is a big deal. Like this did not happen in baseball, 6 or 7 years ago, until I think Jake Peavy was the first one who ever did it. And Dr. Romeo, who at the time was the White Sox team doctor, really had to invent a surgery to reattach his lat to the humerus. And I'm going to throw a couple links to like articles I've written on the topic in some of the show notes, and people can see it. But lat strains and of all different severities are becoming more and more common in baseball. Give me a little like backstory as to like the days leading up to it, and then the initial timeline on the surgery and kind of where you stand on all that stuff, because you started up with us basically right once the fall got going. You were a couple months into your rehab. We kind of worked with you throughout the off season to bring you back.
So like you said, I got hurt in the middle of June. I was pitching a lot, which whatever. So I went 3 days in a row, day off pitch, day off pitch, day off pitch, and I got hurt that last game. So I had just a big workload. I had an elbow injury that didn't require surgery in 2012, and since then I haven't had anything. And felt fine and just thought, whatever, this is the big leagues. So I'm not, I'll pitch every day, and I think I'm quoted as saying that actually. So it kind of backfired, but I still feel the same way. I don't know. I just feel like it's this incredible thing to be pitching in the big leagues, and that I just want to do it as much as I can for as long as I can, and whether that's every day or obviously I'll go for the years now, but as opposed to the days. But with that being said, I pitched a lot, and then I finished. I came in against Boston at home to pitch against Devers, and I went cutter, slider, and then I threw it. It was like 1-2, and threw a fastball, and he grounded out, and I kind of felt something weird that I just figured maybe it was like a bad delivery pitch or something in my shoulder, not even in my lat, and then. And I went out and did my warm-ups. I felt fine. And the first pitch of the next inning, that's when I tore the tendon. And then, I had the surgery a few days later. Then I did my physical therapy stuff back home in Plantation at Donner Sports Therapy. And that was just range of motion stuff. That's like any other surgery it is. You kind of have to get your range of motion back. And then once it was time to do the strength training stuff, it's funny because when I was like you said, it's kind of like a newer injury, and PV had it, and then like you dealt with it with Syndergaard, or and Syndergaard had a less severe injury of it. So I know he goes there or whatever. So when I was doing the research, I Googled like lat injury MLB, just like, I don't even know like what, I don't know. I've never heard of it before. And I saw the video of him when he threw his pitch, and he like did the same thing I did, not nearly as bad, but like I was pretty dramatic. And then, but he kind of like grabbed under his arm, and I was like, oh wow, that's kind of the same thing I did. And then obviously I got the MRI, and they said all the same stuff. And then you had a nice write-up on your website about, you had a nice on the lat injury and all that stuff. And I was like, so that kind of, honestly, that's what sold me to you guys. And then I found out you were pretty local to me. So then we did, we worked together for months all the way up until January. And as you know, and there was definitely ups and downs where, I started throwing with you there. I did a lot of my throwing program there, and it was tough, where we had to change some things to get the cuff strength where it needed to be. And we did a lot of work to get it to get me.
That's the hard part. Not to go off on a tangent with it, but lats are tough because they're so important to the acceleration aspect of throwing. And I think what happens is you see guys as they come back, and when that repair is still settling and they've already started their throwing program, they're trying so hard to really generate velocity, but sometimes they can get into bad habits and generate a lot from the cuff instead of using those smaller muscles as a stabilization. So a lot of it's like finding your mechanics and syncing everything up. What was the exact timeline for when you started throwing?
When did
it was mid-June surgery? So
I think it was 4 months out was throwing, and we took it kind of slow because they were planning it for spring training, not necessarily the timeline of the rehab. So that was nice. It gave me some time I had some flexibility in there, and then January 5th or 6th. I went to the Sarasota complex where our spring training is, and the trainers there kind of took over, and Brian Ebel and his staff did a pretty good job with me there of getting me back on the mound and doing the mound progressions, and then getting me into games, and even recently my last live BP before my first game in spring training, I topped out at 85 twice.
Yeah.
And my average fastball was like 83, on TrackMan in the stadium. And I was like, this is okay. But then my first pitch in a game, was like 88 or 89 or something like that. So I was like, all right, that made me feel a lot better. Not that, 89 is going to get it by guys, but at least it's back to what it was. So that was good to, I definitely was even nervous there all the way up until my very first game.
Yeah, and I think there are a lot of guys that are like that historically, right? They can't show off the big time numbers in like just bullpens or live BPs with nobody in the stands. Then you put 10,000 people in the stands for a spring training game, and it starts to click for them.
Right.
So, if you went back in time, and this is kind of the lightning round we get to. So, if you could go back in time and you could give advice to a teenage Richard Bleier, what would it be?
Oh man, well, I'm embarrassed of myself how I was in high school. Honestly, I was very immature. So I wish that I would. Yeah, I just wish that I would go and tell myself college was great for me.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely got whipped into shape in college very fast.
Because you were really undersized in high school, right? You were.
Yeah, I was small. I didn't grow till. Yeah, and even when I grew, I was probably 6'1", maybe by my senior year, 6'1".
Mm-hmm.
But I was 150 pounds or something, if that, real small. So but I went to a public school and I was the best on my team by a lot, and in terms of pitching at least, and so I really just kind of did whatever I wanted to do, and was very comfortable with where I was at, even though I wasn't very good at all,
Mm-hmm.
Overall compared to the rest of the country and stuff. So, and I'm thankful for the opportunity I got to go to college, because I felt like I got a lot better in college, but I was just a walk-on at a Division II school at the time. So I wasn't like the superstar at a high school by any means. And I would love to go back and tell myself to apply, try. I didn't work out, I just thought I was the best. And it was pretty embarrassing.
And wound up being an Atlantic Sun Conference Pitcher of the Year in your junior year, right? So there was a big change. What would you say the biggest change was in college? Like, was just the understanding of work ethic and consistency and all that? The structure you needed?
Definitely. Like I said, yeah, for sure. I mean, I owe a lot to college, and I was in a great situation. I was able to pitch my freshman year, where had I went to a bigger school or whatever, I probably wouldn't have been. And then I was a Friday night starter my sophomore and junior year, and it was just I worked out and ran. We ran a lot. You know how college is, where like we would do the old flush run after a start, and it was like an hour and a half flush run or something. It was insane. So it was great. It was great for me. I needed some guidance and some accountability, and I definitely got it. So it was, and I learned how to pitch too. I learned about a delivery and feel, for me, the biggest thing now and in general in pitching is feel, being able to make adjustments pitch by pitch, not game by game.
Mm-hmm.
And, if I throw a bad pitch, I know, okay, I've done that a lot. I know exactly how that felt, and I know what went wrong in my delivery, and I know how to make that adjustment. I know exactly where I need to be to get the ball back where it needs to be this next pitch, not, oh, let me look at video later and oh, that's what it was. Next time I'll be better. So, I kind of started learning that at a young age in college, where, my pitching coach, Dan Roselle, was really good about the delivery and teaching me the delivery and kind of getting more consistent. And then I went to summer ball, and that was really good for me too. Not to ramble on, but I played in the Northwoods League the summer of my sophomore year, and I didn't want to go. They made me go, and it was an awesome time. And just the extra competition and the extra innings were really great. And I remember my sophomore year, I threw 80 innings. I think I walked like 30 and hit like 15 or something like that. And then, my junior year, I think I threw 90 innings and walked like 10, or, walked very few and hit very few. I threw a lot more strikes my junior year. So that was good too.
Absolutely. So, and this is the continuation of the lightning round. So, and I'm going to ask this of every pitcher that comes on this, and I think we're going to get a lot of different answers. What's more important, stuff or command?
I mean, for me, command. I feel like I don't have the stuff. If I can throw a bad slider located well, it's going to work. And if I can, if I'm smart enough to know the situation,
Mhm.
and know what the guy's trying to do, and I can locate a bad fastball, the worst, if I read the situation well, the worst he'll do is get a single or double. For me, I just try and keep the ball in the park, and that's
Mhm.
my main goal when I pick what pitch I'm trying to throw. Like, what pitch is he least likely to hit a home run on?
Yep.
And so I can throw something that is off the barrel, that's moving away from the barrel, and it may not be the best pitch or the nastiest slider, and that's probably why I have no strikeouts ever. But as long as I know what's the situation is, I can and locate the ball well, I'll get that weak contact I'm looking for.
That's awesome. All right. So, favorite teammate of all time and why?
Ooh,
At any level.
I have a favorite teammate. They always ask me these questions when I do interviews, and they're like thinking it's going to be like a lightning round, quick thing, and I'll sit here and think about it for 35 minutes because I want to give like an honest answer.
Is that the lefty in you overthinking
Yeah,
stuff?
I would say for sure. Yeah, I really enjoyed. This is like Darren O'Day was a great teammate, and I learned a lot from him. He's so smart, and it's just he knows so much about so much. It was just really impressive to be around him and soak up all his knowledge on off the field stuff and on the field stuff. And and really that group we had, Zach Britton, Darren, and Brad. I took them for granted because they were there, but now that none of them are there, it was really incredible. A threesome. It was a great combo of people. But I don't know, favorite teammate. One of my really good friends, Tyler Tufts, who's a scout for the Padres now. We set up shop in Double A for years, so we grinded it out there in the minors for a long time. I would say he's probably my favorite teammate. We had some good times down there.
Right on.
You definitely learn a lot about each other when you're road roommates and home. We lived together at home, and then we lived together on the road too, because you had to have a roommate on the road trip. So we spent a lot of time together.
All right. So, and you hinted at this a little bit earlier, and this is the last one of the lightning round. Pitchers you like to watch, and why?
My favorite pitcher to watch is Max Scherzer.
There you go.
I'm jealous of his intensity, how he can bring that kind of intensity to the field every single pitch and every single game. That to me is just, and he knows that when guys get in the box, they have no chance. And that kind of, and you can see. I feel like you can just see it. And obviously he has the results the year, but he has been doing this for a long time. And then you look at his career numbers, and it's like the guy stays healthy every single year and knocks out 200 innings and is in the top, few Cy Young votes. And I just think because he does it year after year, it's taken for granted, but it's extremely impressive. And his just competitive nature is really appealing.
That's awesome. All right. This is the last one of the day. This is the parting wisdom. So you got a bunch of probably high school, college, minor league guys, coaches, sports staff, you name it, listen to this. If you could impart one bit of wisdom on them as a parting kind of answer, what would it be?
I think for me, it would be, easy, obviously perseverance. I'm like a model of perseverance here where I was and also too, you never know what could happen. As long as you have an opportunity, you never know. Because for me, I was a walk-on at college, and I ended up getting drafted in the 6th round. And then I got passed over multiple times for years, and then I ended up getting to the big leagues. And now I told people this is the first time that I've ever known where I was going out of spring training. Where even in all the minor leagues, like they're always like, well, you could get released. You could go to Double A, you could go to Triple A, you could stay in extended. Now it's like your health. I got the pitching coach coming up to me like, hey, when do you want to pitch? How many innings do you want to get this spring? What do you feel like you need to be ready for the season? Not, hey, you need to do this to compete for a job. We need to see this out of you. It's, it's your job. Just be ready for the season. It's like, well, this is pretty cool. So, but it hasn't always been like that. And I went through a lot of things. I was working in the off-season working off-season jobs, doing maintenance repair on yachts, Sunseeker yachts. Got to throw that out there. Like, doing like painting boats and stuff in the full. So anyways, and I just, you're just looking and you see, it's like, the big leagues. What? I'm just trying to get to AAA, and now I'm here, and you know, I was, even when I got to the big leagues, it's like, oh, that's awesome. I got my one day in the big leagues. It just made everything worth it. Now I'm right around the corner from arbitration.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, things that I just thought would never happen, honestly. You know, here I am. So it's definitely perseverance, and as long as there's an opportunity, you gotta see it through.
That's awesome, man. Well, you've become quickly a very, very popular guy around the facility, not just with our you know, our staff, but also with the other athletes. I think you might be my wife's favorite professional baseball player, just because the amount of time you guys spend hanging out in the office chatting before and after lifts. So I'm glad that all the listeners got a chance to, you know, hear a little bit about your journey and your success. So people can find you at Richard Bleier on Instagram. It's some of the best self-deprecating humor on the internet, I would say. You're a rock star with that. Again, thank you so much for coming on, and really looking forward to seeing you do your thing this season.
Yeah, thanks, man. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
You got it.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the CSP Elite Baseball Development Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd be thrilled if you'd consider subscribing to the podcast and leaving us a review to read on iTunes. We welcome your suggestions for future guests and questions. Just email elitebaseballpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you for your continued support, and we'll see you next episode.